Awesome. Welcome everyone to tonight's session of HealthyU, a series of conversations. Tonight's topic is resilience. I guarantee you will be pleased that you came out for this, as I was when I read through our esteemed presenter's information that she's going to share with us. So some of you I see are regulars, and I love seeing you back. I love to see the new faces. Thank you for coming out again. My name is Patty Roberts. I'm the Deputy Director here at the City of Port St. Lucie Parks and Recreation Department. And we'll go into a little bit about that toward the end of the session on why mental health and parks and recreation, but there's a very good connection there. So before we get started, and then I'm going to turn over the main part of the evening to our presenter, because there's a lot of information to cover, a lot of really good stuff. But first, I'd like to welcome you all to grab a light dinner. I say light, I don't think it's really light, but please help yourselves to dinner. There should be sodas and water, and help yourselves, bring it back to your seat, and we'll get started then, okay? Is it not working?
No, it is working. That we were testing it, yeah. I'm gonna keep it off so there's not any feedback, but if I go out and put the question, I'll put it on. They're the best. They're the best. They really are. I feel so absolutely grateful all the time, but especially today.
As you should. Yeah. We all should.
Yes, exactly.
I'm nothing without my team.
Good teams are hard to find, so when you have them, you know, it's something special.
Amen. Amen.
Are you going to mention this? I'm sorry? Are you going to mention
Yes,
this?
sir.
Is this the first one on
Yes, sir.
April 8 coming up?
Yes, sir. They're in that box. There's 20 of them, so there's plenty. They might not ever join you again, but all the work I'm putting them through. Thank you so much, ladies. You're gonna each get one. Aren't those cool? Thank you. Thank you for coming, truly. At Veterans, I was not, but I had two of my colleagues there. You probably got one there. All right, why don't we go ahead and get started? Because I know we have a full evening ahead of us. But again, I'm Patty Roberts. I do want to just mention a few housekeeping items, please. We are asking you tonight to please sign in, okay? Our speaker comes to us from, and I can't speak highly enough of the organization she represents. It's Tykes and Teens. You've heard me before, you regulars, extol all about Tykes and Teens, but they've been with me on this journey of HealthyU since day one. And tonight they're back. So we're so pleased, and we'll go into more of her credentials and her background. However, there will be an opportunity for question and answer at the end. It's simply raise your hand. But one thing I want to remind everyone, because I'm bad at reminding people, is because of the way we're recorded, okay, and every session is recorded and available between 1 to 2 weeks after tonight. It'll be on our website. But when you ask a question, these kind ladies have agreed to grab the microphone and take it out to you and ask you to repeat your question on the microphone. Otherwise, this recording, all you're going to hear is Jesse responding back. They won't hear the question. So I need to remember that. And these two ladies have kindly agreed to be my legs for the evening, if you will. Please turn off all your cell phones. And also restrooms are located right out these doors and to the left. Okay? So let's talk just briefly, and I've got a couple of new items that you guys are going to be privy to that no one else knows at this time. Very few do at this time. But HealthyU is a program very near and dear, as some of you know, to my heart. And I apologize if this is going to be a duplication for some of you. But I do get asked, and I was asked even tonight, what's the reasoning behind HealthyU and Patty, and why is she so passionate towards HealthyU? And as some of you know, it's a little bit over 3 years old. We've held monthly sessions for the past 3 years. We've touched on a lot of topics, some very sensitive, some tough, all of which are challenging. But the reason HealthyU was even born is, and the topics that we'll cover this coming year. Tonight, we're talking resiliency. Next month, we're going to talk bullying, cyberbullying, and internet safety. So we'll have our own Port St. Lucie Police Department here, and Gretchen Raziella, she does a phenomenal job talking about bullying. Bullying has been around since my day and long before that, but it's different. It's really different with the cyberbullying and the internet safety components, and Gretchen does a great job on that. And then the following month, in June, we're going to have our first HealthyU session on substance use disorder with alcohol. As many of you know, it's our first one, but it wasn't my lived experience. Mine was the opioids, so I focused on that. Well, then I realized, my word, we've got an issue with alcohol in this society, so let's talk about it. So we've got a specialist coming to us from New Horizons to speak on that. The month after that, we're going to talk suicide awareness. August is always going to be opioid epidemic awareness while I'm here. And then we'll have post-traumatic stress disorder and speak about that. We're also going to, in I think November, talk anxiety reduction techniques to use in nature. Now keep in mind, every session that I talked about is going to be held right here like you guys are, with the exception of the anxiety reduction techniques to use in nature. That's actually going to be held over at our botanical gardens. Has everybody been to our botanical on Westmoreland Boulevard? It's a beautiful place, ma'am. Just down the boulevard to Westmoreland, take a right, and it's on the right-hand side. But it's a beautiful garden setting, and that's where our therapeutic recreation specialist is going to lead you through the gardens and show you some very natural ways to manage your anxiety. And then we'll speak on telemental health, and December will close us out this year on depression and holiday stress. All right. But some of these conversations are very difficult to have. I acknowledge that, I recognize it. But if they're never talked about, the diseases just remain lurking and nothing ever gets healed. So we have to open these dialogues. And that's really what HealthyU is all about, is about educating the public, raising the awareness to the issues, and hopefully removing the stigma associated with a lot of these diseases. I do have a very personal interest in going back to why people ask me why do I do this, but I would share that but 1,691 days ago, and yes, I do count in days, my son died. He was 22 years old, and he died of a heroin overdose that was laced with fentanyl. The critical thing for me to always share with that story is not only am I devastated by his death, but the fact that Danny did not die in Orlando or Miami, or in my hometown of Wisconsin, Milwaukee. Danny didn't die there. He died right in Port St. Lucie. So that disease is right here in our very own city. We've got to talk about it. And so that's where HealthyU was born. It doesn't do any good for people like me, who for 8 years while Danny battled, sat at my house and thought, oh, I'm the only one. No, we've got to talk about these things because they're out there. So in looking back at, Danny's struggles for 8 years and how he fought, I realized so many of these topics. This lady who's going to speak next is going to talk about trauma. We all, when you look at trauma and how it impacts people, you should not wonder why we have things like substance use disorder with alcohol, with opioids, with anything like that. It's a disease, and we'll be educated on that tonight. I do want to share and then I promise I'll get it over to the presenter, but I do want to just announce the next session, which of our newest program, which is called Wellness Connection. Some of you who have been to a couple of those. Wellness Connection, don't confuse it with why we're here today, which is HealthyU. Wellness Connection is about health, okay? My baby is mental health, but I also now have the Wellness Connection under my belt too. And so we meet quarterly, and what we do is we have it out in different facilities. The next one is the end of this month. It's April 27th. It's going to be at Minsky Gym. Does everybody know where that is on the west side? It's in Whispering Pines Park, okay? So it'll be held indoors there, and the topic there is going to be on tobacco and vaping cessation. So I have two great presenters coming to us, Florida Department of Health actually is one of the presenters, who will talk to us on how you can quit tobacco and vaping. So that's the next session of Wellness Connection. And then, like I said, the next session in May, early May, is bullying, cyberbullying, and internet safety. That'll be right back here. Keep in mind, for both of those programs, though, please pre-register. Otherwise, I can't have a count for the food. So that's why we asked the first 50 people to pre-register, and then we can make this happen. One of the other events that I believe I gave you a flyer on, brand new event. The flyers are actually out, so this one's not a secret, but the next one will be. But the next event that we're doing is called the pop-up food pantry that's going to be coming every quarter now into a city park. I have long wanted to bring, these are called what are called food insecurity events. And again, it's just like many topics we talk about in HealthyU. Many people in this city I have found don't want to speak about the fact that on my street alone, I know there are 2 young families with children who are struggling to feed those children. $9 for a carton of eggs, however much for a gallon of milk, that's hard. And so what we've done is we've partnered with an organization called United Against Poverty. And they're also called UP, so I'll be using that acronym. They are a phenomenal facility in St. Lucie County, and they will be coming out this Saturday. So just in a couple days, they'll be coming out for their very first event at Sportsman's Park. Does everybody know where that is on Prima Vista? Okay, so they're gonna come out, they're gonna bring their mobile food truck, and they'll park it on facing Prima Vista, right in front of the playground. And they'll set up there at 9 o'clock in the morning until noon or when supplies last. And they'll be selling at a very reduced price, very healthy foods. So it'll be produce, it'll be bulk, might be bulk granola bars, that type of thing, bulk Gatorade, that type of thing. But it's primarily, it's geared for those who are stretched and having a hard time feeding their families. So please share that with anyone who may be needing those services. Let's see, we're gonna be at Sportsman's this month. And then back in June, I believe we're at Whispering Pines on the west side. And then the 2 months later, we'll be at Lingate Park, which is kind of central Port St. Lucie. And then we'll be back at Sportsman's to close out the year. So real excited about a partnership with UP, and they're good folks to have. The other thing I want to just, before I present our presenter tonight, I just want to introduce this one is kind of top secret, if you will, but every year, our department does a pretty robust May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I've got a lady here who can be a testimonial to it, but we do a very robust May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And this May, we've got a lot of new things coming. I would offer out, the flyers should be coming out maybe in about another week, but we will offer 8 free programs during the month. About 4 or 5 of them are yoga. Now keep in mind, every one of these programs are held outdoors. They are not inside like this. And they're in a lot of our really beautiful parks. So you will have yoga at Veterans Park at Rivergate, which is right along the river there, which is a gorgeous setting. We'll have yoga at our golf course, at the Saints Golf Course, and a couple other really beautiful parks. We also increased, last year we offered 1 forest bathing. This year we're gonna offer 2 because last year it was so popular. So we will have 2 forest bathings, and one is at Botanical Gardens. And I apologize, I don't remember the other location, but the flyer will have it on there. We're gonna offer 1 brain fitness, which was very popular last year as well. And then a new topic, which is gonna be the same gentleman who's gonna work in, or offer his services for HealthyU. He's gonna do anxiety reduction in nature. And he's gonna do that out at Woodland Trails Park on the west side, southwest side of town. They have a beautiful walking trail that's shaded and that type of thing. So he'll be closing out the month of May for us on that. So that's coming out in May, but also as part of May is Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm asking you as a community, and I will ask the entire community once it comes out on our flyers, but we've developed a little adjunct effort to May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and it's called You Matter Kits. So it's a You Matter kit. And I have an example of one. And what these are geared for, everyone, is to recognize those in our community who are not as fortunate as you and I, financially, okay? Whether they be unhoused, whether they be living multiple families in one home. It's to recognize that people are going through some tough times. And for those of my veterans, you know that we did have a session recently on homelessness and how it impacts, which I'm very passionate about that. But this is an actual You Matter kit, all right? So what it consists of is sunscreen, soap or shampoo, bottled water, a pair of socks. Let's see, there's wipes, hand sanitizer type things. Let's see, toothbrush, toothpaste, deodorant, bottled water, a sleeve of crackers, okay? But the two critical items in it are gonna be these two. And that is, there is a business card in here for 211. And most of you know who 211 is, but it'll give you all of the resources for mental health services. So everyone receiving a kit, one of these kits will have resources on who they can reach out to, should they be experiencing it. And then for me, the most important piece is it's a customized, and each bag has a different saying on it, word of encouragement, message of encouragement. This one says, fall 7 times, stand up 8. So that bag will be given out. Our park police officers have requested several bags because they come across homeless and less fortunate. I've also partnered with the Treasure Coast Food Bank, and they will be coming and getting bags from us and distributing it at their events that they do for the less fortunate. The reason I'm mentioning it to you all is we will be having donation cups, if you will, at all 4 of our facilities. And we'll be asking for cash donations, because if you look at something like this and you think, okay, it's not hugely expensive, but we just produced 193 of them, okay? So we need we need help to get these out to our community. And I really believe they're gonna go very fast once the word gets out that these are here and that we can help someone simply by giving them a bag and saying, guess what? You matter. You matter to me. So that's what the new incentive is for the month of May. And so get the word out to and if you have it in your resources to donate, please do so. But we're really trying to get the community to back us on this, to recognize that we do have an issue out there. And tonight when I leave here, when I go by this Deacon Street bus station over here, trust, I'm taking a couple bags with me, okay? So again, just kind of a survival kit, and just the message is you're important to us. And I know you're going through some rough times, but it will get better. So that's enough about me and our HealthyU. I'm now going to present, and if I can get rid of my kit. Oh, these ladies are so helpful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, let's talk about why we're here tonight. We are here tonight to speak on resilience. And I would offer this out as an introduction to our presenter. She is a nationally credentialed senior advocate and senior certified life coach, Jessie Adamson. She has served trauma survivors for over 12 years. Human trafficking, domestic violence, and sexual assault trauma recovery and advocacy were her focus during her time in direct services. After 3 years of serving on a trauma-informed care pilot grant within the anti-domestic violence sector, Jessie is now embracing the role of training the Treasure Coast community in trauma-informed care and healing-centered practices. Jessie hinges her career on the fact that trauma survivors do recover and can live meaningful, high-quality, and fulfilling lives through strategically healing their nervous systems and building healthy relationships. So, without further ado, may I introduce Ms. Jessie Adamson with Tykes and Teens.
Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Thanks again, Patty. Hi, everybody. It's really good to be here tonight. Thank you all for coming out. I'm really excited to present to you. The content that I have is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I definitely encourage you all, if you have questions, I have co-facilitators here with me tonight. So just by all means, I would love this to be something that we can have a learning environment that we're all working together to learn. So thank you again for being here. So the topic tonight is resiliency. The first half of this training will be on compassion fatigue, which is why we need resiliency. So if you have that word resiliency buzzing in your head, do not fear, we will get there. We just want to know why we need the resiliency before we talk about it. So we'll go ahead and start digging into the content here. Okay, so I work with tykes and teens. I'm very honored to say that that's the case, as do my colleagues. We have Sarah here with us, and we also have Cassie. We are all on the same team together and do a lot of great work and really brainstorm about how to help the community out in a lot of different ways, including these trainings. These are the different topics that we go over. So we have a lot of different topics that we go over, and once again, you all are here for the compassion, fatigue, and resiliency this evening. Has anyone ever heard of the art of kintsugi? You have. Would anybody like to perhaps, and I'm so used to asking people to talk, and I know we have the microphones. So does anybody want to try to explain what this art is and why it's important to us as humans? What does it represent to us? Does anybody want to take a gander?
So the art would be taking something that's broken and then being able to fill it in and make it complete again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing. I love interaction. So thanks y'all for engaging with me. And what's even cool about the fact that they're repairing it in the way that they do is they're repairing the cracks with gold. So the item is actually worth more after the damage has been done than beforehand. And that's how I see trauma. And I hope that you can see it the same way. Trauma is something that comes upon us and it seemingly destroys what is our core. But then once we start to build resiliency and work on our healing, our value, and the knowledge that we've gained from those experiences can actually make us worth more, make us stronger individuals. So I really wanted to make that noted today. So this particular art form symbolizes how we must incorporate our wounds into who we are rather than trying to merely repair and forget them. The things that we have been through that are challenging, that makes us who we are. That's why we're not all cookie cutter people walking around, right? With the same personalities and the same gifts and all that sort of thing. Our gifts often are birthed out of adversity. So it's something very important to remember. So that when you came in, there's a table up front that has some worksheets on there. So that's called our action plan, and we'll be utilizing those today. When you see the symbol on the slide, you can go ahead and either fill it in or just use it as a guide and look at it if you're not much of a note taker. This is your document, completely up to you how you utilize it. So I just wanted to let you know that that's what this is for. There's also 2 other documents, and we'll come upon those as we continue through the presentation. So this is what this form looks like in case you're looking for it in your stack of papers. So the first question on there is, what do you want to know or learn about compassion fatigue? And so you may not even know what compassion fatigue is. So let me help you out with that. We're going to go over it a little bit later as well, but it's generally when we are in our world that is so full of hurt, and there's so many individuals who are hurting. And when we see people who are hurting, we try to help them. But over time, we begin to wear down and we get tired. You know, have you ever seen a phone call from a friend who needs a lot of help a lot, and the phone's ringing and you see their name on the caller ID, and you know you want to answer it, and you know you want to be helpful, but you kind of have to take that deep sigh before you do? Compassion fatigue, right? It's just, it's when we give so much of ourselves that we start to feel drained is really what that looks like. And that can happen in the workplace, it can happen in our neighborhoods, it can happen with our families, especially when we're good, caring people. And just based on the fact that you're here tonight shows me that you're good, caring people, right? Otherwise, you know, you'd be doing something else tonight, but you care about our city, you care about our community, and that's why you're here. So if that question is a little bit loaded for you and it's hard to kind of encapsulate, I can rephrase it for you. What are you scared about when it comes to experiencing compassion fatigue? For me, on a personal level, I worry about getting sick. Sometimes I work so hard and I give and I give and I give that I burn out, and so that's something that scares me about compassion fatigue. And that's why I love this information, because it gives me the strength and the knowledge to not burn out. So I want you all to do me a favor and take a second. You can close your eyes or keep your eyes open, whatever you're comfortable with, and check in with yourself. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being fantastic, euphoric, and 1 being pretty miserable, what is your stress level right now? You don't have to say it out loud, but kind of get that number in your mind. Does everybody have their number? Sometimes you have to kind of listen to your gut. Sometimes people who aren't familiar with checking in, this is kind of a hard exercise. Now go ahead and close your eyes again, or don't, and call to mind a particular challenge. It could be a family member, it could be a child, it could be a colleague, it could be a client, it could be a neighbor. And think about that particularly challenging person. What number are you at now? Does that number change? A lot of times you can almost feel like a gut reaction, like in your stomach, where you're like, oof, I do not feel as good as I did 2 minutes ago, right? So if your number changed, what we want to notice are our thoughts, our feelings, the sensations in our body. Did anybody experience a decrease when you started thinking about that stressful thing? Like you have this great food, you're in this wonderful air-conditioned room, and then all of a sudden you went to that more negative thing and you felt your number fall? I see some heads nodding yes. Okay, just because I don't want to leave you hanging like that, let's go ahead and take another moment and picture somewhere that is your favorite space in the world. For me, it's Waveland Beach at sunset. So just take another minute and just picture whatever that place is, and just kind of breathe in, pretending you're there for a minute. And then did your number change again? Do you feel the different sensations in your body? These are awareness exercises that we can practice anytime in the day. If we're having a hard time, we can go to our happy place, which, by the way, doesn't have to be a real place, which is my favorite part. You can make up a magical land if you want to, which is always fun. So what we want to keep in mind here is that our compassion fatigue is truly drawn on and it's worn on when we are thinking about the more negative things that happen around us, not even necessarily to us, but around us. If we hear of a neighbor having a hard time, or if we hear of someone in our family having a hard time, that wears on us. And so what do we do with that? That's why we're here tonight. So as I mentioned before, compassion fatigue is basically stress resulting from helping or wanting to help people who are experiencing trauma or suffering. Okay? So if this is another part of the action plan, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you think your current level of compassion fatigue is? Does anybody want to share? 10? Okay, we had a 10 on this side of the room. Any other thoughts? About 10 too? Yeah, it's a very real thing, it's very real. And I think our society really started to feel how serious this is through the pandemic that we experienced. I think a lot of us just kind of pushed it on the back burner and didn't address it. And then when we were all going through something collectively, we really said, hey, something's got to give, because we can't burn the candle at both ends and expect it to end well for anybody, right? So I'm glad that you can note what your current level of compassion fatigue is. It's my hope that as we go over this and start practicing some of the things that are in this training, that we'll see that number begin to improve. So this is professional quality of life scale, and kind of a little graphic to show us where compassion fatigue sits. It doesn't have to be professional. So if you don't work, if you're a homemaker or you're retired, this still absolutely applies to you based on the fact that you are still here in society, right? So we've got compassion fatigue, and out of compassion fatigue come burnout and secondary trauma. Does anybody know what secondary trauma is and would like to share with the group? Oh, good. That gives me the opportunity to tell y'all. So secondary trauma is basically when somebody else close to us is experiencing trauma, and therefore we experience trauma as well. So if somebody very close to us goes through a catastrophic event and we hear about it time and time again, that can actually affect us as though we actually went through it on some level. We may not have been there physically, but because we've had to live through their stories and empathizing with them, we can actually experience secondary trauma, even not having gone through it. And I think we saw a lot of that during COVID as well. What we want to do is we want to build resiliency so that we can stay on the compassion satisfaction side. We want to build up our inner strength and know that whatever we need is already within ourselves so that we can go ahead and have compassion satisfaction. We can still be there for other individuals, but we can also, and most importantly, be there for ourselves because we can't pour from an empty cup, right? I might skip past some slides because I want to make sure we have time to really dig into some of these items here. So common burnout risk factors. Go ahead and take a moment and read over these if you would be so kind. And if anybody would like to share which ones stick out to you and share that with the room, I would be most grateful. And again, work doesn't have to mean an actual 9 to 5. It could be whatever it is that you do in your community, whether it's volunteering, helping with family stuff, any of that. Does anybody see one that's kind of jumping out off the wall and sticking out to y'all a little bit? I think it's very courageous that you shared what you shared, that you're going so far out of your way to help people, but at the end of the day, sometimes because of the system we work in, even though we want to save every single person who needs it, we can't, right? And so that's where it's so important to remember that we do what we can and we influence where we can, and where we can't, we just have to surrender that and not carry it, because if we do, it will drain us significantly as to where we can't help the next person that we might actually have the resources to help, right? And it's hard. And if you're somebody who is a giver, you know, by nature, it can be so, so challenging. So thank you for sharing. That's one that definitely sticks out to me as well. And thank you for doing all that you're doing in that project. So here are some common misconceptions that contribute to compassion fatigue. So take a look at these and let me know which ones stick out to you. Any thoughts? The second one actually resonates with what you were just saying a bit, huh? Who would like to note which of these stick out to you? Sarah? Okay, absolutely.
The bottom one, the person I'm helping will appreciate everything I do for them, is huge for me. And that's something I had to learn in this field, that I can do my best, but I'm not responsible for how it's received. And taking that off of my plate and realizing I just have to be secure in what I'm giving and putting forward, and allow that person, if they don't want to receive it, that's their choice, and respecting their choice.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a heavy one too, right? Sometimes we really go out of our way. Have you ever had that experience where you really go out of your way for somebody? You do everything you can for them. And they're like, okay, thanks. And like, they were like, okay, no problem, right? You're expecting a little bit more than that. Not that we do it for the thanks, but just because we put our heart and our soul into something, and you know, what happened to our heart and our soul? Like, was it even received? So that's something that's very real. And I'm responsible for outcomes. That's a big misconception. You know, we work really hard, but at the end of the day, it's not always up to us how the outcome unfolds, no matter what project it is we're working on, who we're caring for. So thank you all for sharing. I appreciate it. Here's some more. I can do it alone. That's a scary one. We are placed in community for a reason, right? Do any of these three pop out to anybody? I like the second one a lot. Sometimes we think we know what we're getting into, and we get into it and we're like, oh man, what did we sign up for? And then the resources, right? We want to help, but sometimes we don't have the capacity to. So these are all things that I wanted to bring up, because if you're experiencing these, I want you to know that you're not alone. And I want you to know that these are misconceptions, and that embracing community, asking for help. I asked for help tonight. I told my colleagues, I was like, can y'all come and have my back? And they're here, and it worked out great now, especially now we have microphones walking around and whatnot. So sometimes we have to ask for help, and it's not always easy to, right? So this is something that we have to consider. What do we bring with us? Everybody that we experience within our lives, whether it's in line at Walmart or wherever else we are, they have an invisible suitcase with them, packed full of their trauma. So when the person at Walmart decides to be a little bit spicy and give us a little bit of an interesting interaction, it might be helpful to remember their invisible suitcase. And we don't know what's in it, but they have one, because we all do. And we don't see what's there causing that behavior, but there's always something there. Behavior is always somebody trying to ask for help in a way. We know that when babies cry, we know that they need one of four things, right? They need to be fed, burp, change, sleep. And then for some reason, when we get older, all of a sudden behavior is not an expression of a need anymore. And I don't know who taught us that, but it's wrong, because behavior is an expression of a need. So if you have somebody who's getting a little spicy with you, just remember their invisible suitcase is right next to them and they are expressing a need. And maybe they don't know the best way to express it, but that's what's happening. So we have a window of tolerance that we want to try to stay in when it comes to keeping our stress levels down. When we are outside of that window of tolerance, we are experiencing a more reactionary situation that's called fight or flight. And then we also have the shutting down side. That's the side I personally tend to go towards. It's more of a freeze, and also fawning is a new one. So it's not just fight, flight, and freeze anymore. It's fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is actually people pleasing, also a trauma response, just like the other three. So if you have somebody in your life who is extremely amenable, constantly trying to help, constantly trying to make you happy, that could actually be a trauma response. And does anybody know, can you think critically and creatively to see why somebody might learn to try to please everybody around them as a trauma response? Maybe it's because that's how they were staying safe for a long time, is keeping people happy, right? So we might see that, and it's important to recognize that as well. So back to our action plan. I'm going to give you some examples here, but what we're going to do is we're going to list 3 signs or symptoms of compassion fatigue that you are currently aware of, either in your work or your personal lives, okay? So I'm going to give you some examples, and I love that meme with the dog sitting in the burning cafe. Just everything's fine, because isn't that how our society teaches us to act, right? When people say, how are you? They're not looking for the answer most of the time. They're looking for, good, thanks, how are you, right? And I encourage people, if you don't have time to hear a real answer, don't ask. Don't ask. Instead, say, it's good to see you. No question there, right? So we're going to go over some examples, and when you see any of these stick out to you, you can go ahead and notate it. You can raise your hand, and Cassie will bring the mic over so that you can talk about which one you've selected. There are 4 different pages I'm going to show you here, and you can write your top 3 down. Poor concentration, irritability, inability to make decisions, racing or intrusive thoughts, excessive worrying, catastrophizing, where you're just something, turning a molehill into a mountain, but it may not actually be a molehill in your perspective. Do any of these stick out to y'all? Any in particular that you'd like to share with the room?
This is heavy.
It is.
My younger sister in Illinois is very sick, and she's basically going to die of cancer. And I moved here 3 months ago, and it was very hard to leave. But if it wasn't for my husband saying, well, what about us? I wouldn't be here. But now I'm experiencing all that in all your previous pages. Mm-hmm. And some guilt. I wish you'd possibly address the guilt, because it actually, the racing intrusive thoughts will wake me up in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. And now I'm faced with, my nephew called me, and he's going to be out of town, and he'd asked me to come there for about a week or so, and I don't want to go.
Right.
And
right.
I think now, and I feel terrible for that, and I'm thinking if I don't go, there's a possibility I may not see her again alive. So right. It's like secondary trauma. I think what I'm understanding what's falling under there, mm-hmm. and it makes it even harder because I'm a nurse.
Right, right.
So that's my story.
I first of all want to thank you for sharing. I also want to let you know, and I think I speak on behalf of the room, that we all want to just embrace you and let you know that you are not alone and that I'm so sorry you're going through this, but your examples are also quite on point for our discussion tonight, that it's very challenging when we're going through something so catastrophic and so much secondary trauma. And because you're so close to her, that might even be considered primary trauma, right? And then that racing and intrusive thoughts are no joke. You know, when you have them, for those of you who have experienced those, they're very frustrating because they can't be controlled. They're just constant. So I appreciate you sharing that. And I'm really looking forward to the second half so that you can see some things that we can do to build that resiliency. And when it comes to the guilt, by show of hands, and I'll speak to the mic for the recording, how many in here have ever felt guilt when they have done nothing wrong in particular? And I see almost every hand in the room going up, and those who weren't raising their hands are getting help from their neighbors, which I appreciate. Yeah, misplaced guilt is a very common thing in our society. It's a societal issue, and I don't think it's any in particular generation's fault. I think we always do the best with what we can, but how many of us were raised being told shame on you when we do simple things that are a mistake, right? And so that kind of culture that we've had here has pretty much trained us that we should have guilt for things that we didn't do or that we didn't intentionally do wrong, right? And so now, based on science and based on the things we know that we're trying to get away from that. But when it's so far ingrained within us, how do we get away from that truly, right? And I think building resiliency is truly the key, and we'll be going over that here in just a minute. So thank you again for sharing. Here's some more. These are physical presentations. Exhaustion, headache and tension, insomnia, backache, persistent cold, sore throat, lowered immune system. These are emotional presentations here. Easily upset and angered, narcissism, a sense of hopelessness, which can be a very scary place, diminished sense of enjoyment of life, helplessness, and behavioral presentations, increased use of alcohol or drug, absenteeism, isolation from others, non-participation in teamwork, difficulty separating work from home. Do any of these other ones resonate with anyone that would like to speak to them? And that's okay if not, I just want to make sure you all have the chance. Do any of the, by nod of heads and raise of hands, are these sounding very familiar? Yeah. So this is the compassion fatigue trajectory. So we're going from a zealot who's enthusiastic, committed, engaged, overextending, right? Kind of think of like the new hire, right? I'm here to do anything you need, right? And then we've got the next stage is irritability, kind of cutting corners, making mistakes, becoming more cynical. And we kind of want to be a little bit in here because like nothing wrong with a little sarcasm, but at the same time, we don't want to be overextending either because we need healthy boundaries. And then we've got withdrawal, losing compassion, turning to unhealthy behaviors. From there, we go into the zombie phase on autopilot, just a loss of compassion. Like we wake up, we're like, all right, here we go again. People ask us how we are. We're like, living the dream. Like, what else are we going to say, right? And we start getting a little bit frazzled here. And then burnout, right? Where we're overwhelmed and we're leaving the work. And again, this doesn't have to be a paid position. Like, this could be work in a ministry. This could be work in your neighborhood. This could be work for your family, right? And we're done. We're done. We just can't do it anymore when we get to that point. The good news is that this is actually a continuum. It's not just a downward slope. You can also go back up. And that's what resiliency helps us do. So kind of think about where you are right now and just consider the fact that when we are experiencing compassion fatigue, we go down that slide. And when we are experiencing compassion satisfaction, we work our way back up the ladder, okay? So that's what that looks like there. So now we're gonna go over 5 ways to overcome compassion fatigue and build resiliency. So this is where we start getting into the problem solving. We think we've all acknowledged that in this room, there's a ton of burnout, a ton of compassion fatigue, and that we all experience it because we're humans and we're not robots. And that's okay, that's the human experience. Feeling things is good, and it's important to name our feelings as well. Name it to tame it, right? So if you have a hard time naming your feelings, there are feelings wheels online that you can look up that actually help you name your feelings. I look at those sometimes because I have so many different emotions, I don't even know, I couldn't even begin. So it's important to do that. So we want to reflect on where we are and what we need. So you could even take a self-assessment if you do want to online. There's something called a ProQual. It's a quality of life, professional quality of life test, and you basically just by numeric rating rate how you're doing. Some people are self-aware enough where you don't need to write down a bunch of numbers to know your burnout, and that's okay too, you know? So you could acknowledge what aspects are systemic and which are within your control. And I think this is a little bit about what we were speaking about a minute ago. We can give 110% of ourselves to a project. And if the system has so much red tape that we cannot go through, then that's not on us, right? And so we have to acknowledge what's within our control and what's not within our control in order to keep a healthy balance. We have to re-engage in activities that give us energy and bring us joy. If we're constantly giving and pouring from our cup and we're not taking time to fill our cup, that's going to be an issue. We need to play, we need to have fun, work hard, play hard, right? Can someone tell me something that they do for fun to fill your cup? I'd love to hear from the room. And we'll come to you right after, thank you. Yeah, it's perfect.
I like to go dancing.
Yes.
Dancing fills me up.
I'm a dancer too. I love that.
I come over here to the Civic Center and attend the senior fit, the aerobics, so it's dancing,
Yes.
and also the yoga part of it. So I get a combination of both.
Absolutely.
And of course, the meditation at home, listen to meditative music before I go to sleep and believe in the higher power.
Yes,
God
yes,
is the most important.
yes, yes. What was said just then, God is the most important. I really appreciate that perspective, and I think that's great. And there are apps that you can meditate for free. YouTube has free meditations, you know, and people are like, oh, I can't meditate. Like, everybody can meditate. You just sit there and listen to it. And people are like, oh, I fall asleep when I meditate. I'm like, that's okay too. That means you're super relaxed, right? There are no rules. It's meditation. You do what feels right, right? So thank you for sharing. Those are all great examples. I know some people like sports. A lot of people like body movement because we don't get a lot of that in our desk jobs and our things that we're doing from day to day. Any other thoughts on what ideas of things that you can do to fill your cup?
I'm over here, I mean, at the Civic Center, you pay per month and you can, attend so many facilities over here, which is really good.
Yes.
And people, I don't see, many people, of course, people do come for it, but there could be more.
Yes. Yeah, that's a
Or
great
even
point.
just walk in the park,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a great point. You know, a lot of us sit at home and we're like, well, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, people are working hard all the time, right? Like this Patty who are working hard all the time to make sure that we have something to do. That's why y'all are here. So you already know it, right? But we'll say it loud for everybody who's watching this online. But I think it's so important to know that there are resources out here. This is community. It takes a village, right? So we may not be able to build our own events, but if they're already built, like, let's go to them, right? I think that's a fantastic point. Number 2, setting healthy boundaries. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a great night. This is what we really need to talk about. Like after this, we can go. No, I'm just kidding. It is so important. Healthy boundaries are probably the most challenging thing to embrace in our lives because again, a lot of us have been brought up to make sure that we say yes, to make sure that we're there when people ask help of us. And in the end of the day, no is a complete sentence. I've been in recovery from alcohol and opioids for 5 years. And when I started going into the recovery program, they handed us all thank you cards that had really beautifully embossed thank yous on the front. And they had us take Sharpies that were gnarly colors and write no really big on the top. So it actually read no thank you. And they had us hang those in our houses for a year. That thank you card changed my life because after seeing it over and over again, I realized, first of all, no doesn't have to be a mean response because it said no thank you and it was embossed and it was pretty script, right? And so it doesn't have to be a mean response. And we have to remember, we don't have to explain our no. That's something that I'm working on, right? Someone invites me to something, I don't want to go. And I'm like, well, what am I going to tell them? What's going to be my excuse? Will they believe me? Will that excuse be good enough? They don't need any of that. Because if they are your people, if they are part of your tribe and you say no, they are going to honor that. And if they're not, oh well, right? Because they're not your people, they're not part of your tribe. So no is a complete sentence. And I encourage you to try to tap into that and try it, because a lot of us have a hard time with no's. The if-then boundary is one of my favorite boundaries. So that's when you say, if you do X, Y, Z, then my response will be 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if somebody who is in your inner circle keeps coming up to you and saying things a little bit abrasively to you, they're kind of in your face a little bit, and you say, if you do that again, then I'm going to leave our conversation and I'll come back maybe 24 hours later to readdress it. But then we follow through with that boundary. We actually do it. That's the key, right? We can come up with verbal boundaries all day, but if we don't implement them, people aren't going to believe us moving forward. So we have to follow through with those. The if-then boundary is phenomenal. I got this information from the book by Dr. Cloud and Dr. Townsend called Boundaries. That this book series changed my life. It is faith-based, just as a heads up if that's your thing or if it's not. But I'm a huge fan of this series. So if you have the chance, if you struggle with boundaries and you have the chance to read the Boundaries series, I highly encourage it. So also resist self-blame for inability to avoid moral injury. So we're dealing with this guilt again, right? So if we say no to somebody because that's what we need, we just have to be okay with that. Self-care is the best care. We need to take care of ourselves. It is so important. So number 3 is to cultivate a growth mindset. This is the way that we view situations, events, and circumstances and how they shape our situations. We're embracing optimism, which can be hard for trauma survivors because a lot of times we've seen negative. And so it's like, what is the positive? We've seen all the gross, like where's that silver lining everyone's always talking about, right? But we can actually retrain our brains to have this. We're going to cultivate positivity and a growth mindset to live a fulfilling life. So this is what it looks like. We've got these 2 mindsets that every day when we wake up, we choose from. The fixed mindset is basically if something goes wrong, that's it. The day's over. It's just what it is, and it was a bad day. A growth mindset is, what can I learn from this? How is this experience going to make me a better, stronger, more resilient individual, right? It's when we get that bad feedback from somebody, and even if it's not 100% true, we can kind of think about it and what can we glean from it and what can we do better moving forward without sitting in a pool of guilt, without sitting in a pool of, negativity. It's turning everything around to make us more resilient, more strong. I had a math teacher when I was younger who anytime we were struggling, he would get so excited. He's like, yes, we're struggling. That means we're learning. And I was always just like, okay, this guy's like, but now when when I went through college and started going through adult stuff and I would struggle, I would always hear Mr. Cox in my head, like, yay, we're struggling, we're learning. And that's that growth mindset, right? And it took me a while. My brain had to develop further to get on the same page, but now I know what he was doing. He was training us to be adults who have a growth mindset. And we can rewire our brain by simply practicing it. And we can do that most importantly by reflecting at the end of the day, right? What hardship did we experience and how can that apply to tomorrow being a better day for us? Number 4, practice self-care. Put yourself first. I have a question for you all. Is self-care a luxury? I'm seeing some no's. No's. It is not a luxury. It is a necessity. So we can do things like get good sleep, plan your meals, schedule uninterrupted breaks, not have guilt for having self-care. I grew up in a culture where go, go, go is the only way. And so when I was in my 20s and I would call out of work because I was sick, I would just sit at home and get even more sick because of how high my anxiety was because I was sick and I was home, right? And so I had to retrain my brain that if I'm calling out because I'm sick, or even if I'm calling in healthy, because we should call in healthy when we need to, right? Because our lives should not revolve around our work all the time. They should revolve around our health and our well-being. We should be able to celebrate that, and we should be able to be okay with that. And my close tribe, my inner circle, if I call out of work, they actually root me on. They say, I'm glad you're taking the time. You deserve this. Or if they see me if they see me getting burnt out and they see me kind of on edge and some of those other symptoms we saw earlier, they'll say, when's your next PTO day? Let's get that on the calendar, right? And that's the kind of people we want around us, where someone can say, you're not going in the garden today. You're not going for a 5-mile walk today. Like, we're going to take care of you in a different way. You're tired. We need to rest. Rest is so important. And also consider self-care. It doesn't always have to be that Hallmark bubble bath, candles lit type situation. Okay. This right here is self-care. The fact that you all are here right now is self-care. And this is something that's going to help you in the future as well and fill your toolbox. So it doesn't always have to be that Hallmark wispy stuff. Seek out support. This is hard, especially for those of us who are survivors of trauma. And sometimes it's cultural as well. We're taught not to ask for help. We really need to make sure that we consider resisting the natural tendency of compassion fatigue to isolate and withdraw. When we get burnt out, I was just talking to another group recently about how when I get burnt out, the number one thing I want to do is wrap myself in a blanket and just be in a dark room for as long as people will let me. But that is so unhealthy. And that's why I'm glad my tribe comes and knocks on my door when I don't answer my phone. You know what I mean? So what do we have to do to get up off the couch? First, we have to realize, okay, I'm going to take my hour of doing this that feels good, but then I'm going to take the blanket off of me because we live in Florida and it's not even cold. And right? And we need to get up and we need to go out and we need to seek out, even if it's a very small talk conversation with a stranger, that can actually turn our entire day around. Sometimes we just need that community, that interaction. That's what we're built for, right? And we live in a society today because we all have separate homes and our society is built in this way where we don't have that interaction. So I encourage you, the next time you're really feeling down, get out and small talk with people. Or if you have somebody you can call and have more deep talk, do that too. So we definitely want to consider seeking out support. Process your experiences and debrief on a regular basis, even if you feel strong and are expressing the same thing over and over. My sister and my brother-in-law taught me that one time they were having a disagreement, and they're both very rational people, and they talked that disagreement out over and over for 3 weeks until they figured it out. And I was like, 3 weeks? I'm like, marriage isn't for me, but now I get it. Now I understand what they were doing, right? It's not that they were talking about it too much. It's that they were trying to talk about it from so many different angles that they really got to the root, and they were able to get to that root so that they can find healing in the circumstances. And how beautiful if we have somebody in our life who is willing to hear us talk something out from a million different angles. And if we don't have that, that's what journals are for. And we know we just got some HealthyU journals from Miss Patty. So if you don't have someone that you're comfortable talking to, then write all those different angles down until you can't anymore. Journaling is a great way to seek out support if you don't have somebody that you can call. So on your action plan, I want you just to take note of what you're doing well from these 5 things we just went over and what you might need to do a little bit better at. So reflect on where you are. Maybe it's naming your emotions, setting healthy boundaries, saying no and not feeling guilt from that, cultivating a growth mindset, practicing self-care, seeking out support. And if you have any thoughts, please feel free to share them. Okay, compassion, satisfaction. I love this so much. Is the ultimate knowing that the lighthouse is not responsible for the safety of the ship, but only responsible for the light. I think this resonates a lot with what Sarah was saying earlier, right? We can give and we can give, but we can't force anybody to partake, right? And we can't force the outcome either. We can just do our job and know that if people want help, that they are going to meet us halfway. They are going to do their job. We never see a lighthouse walking out into the ocean to go fetch the ships. That never happens. The lighthouse is still, it's there doing its job and having peace with itself. All right, so on your action plan, there is an opportunity for you to write 1 step you can take to increase your compassion satisfaction. And if you need some examples, here are some examples that you can pull from. Focusing on what's going right in your work or your personal life. Reminding yourself of success. I actually have an entire folder in my email inbox of positive things people have emailed me. They're like, you did a great job on that project. I'm like, put it in there. And when I'm having a hard day, guess what file I go to, right? Connecting with your colleagues, that community, building your personal network, taking time off, setting work and personal boundaries, doing things to reignite and maintain your passion. We mentioned some of those earlier. Having a self-care plan that includes your mind, body, and spirit, right? A lot of us seem to go to the physical stuff for self-care, and then some mind and spirit aspects were mentioned, but it really is a wheel. We need to make sure we're doing all of it. Otherwise, our wheel's going to be really clunky when it's going down the street. So here's another definition of resilience here. I know someone at the beginning was asking what the definition of resilience is. So it's advancing despite adversity. Okay, so we are working towards our vision, we're being proactive, and when we experience challenges, whether large or small, we are actually pushing through and being productive and still getting through those things without really being thrown off kilter too much. I'm going to try to play this video for y'all and see if it'll work. Okay, enjoy. Cheeky and has some funny comedy, dry comedy, but I love it.
Brains. They are everywhere. In the world's gentlest places and its harshest. In this unforgiving environment, some brains exhibit troubling signs. Addiction, illness, depression, social disorder. Yet others thrive. Why have some brains developed the ability to cope in harsh conditions while others struggle? It is one of nature's great secrets.
Hi. Hello? This is amazing. But I just need to clarify a few things. This great secret? It's actually science. Severe adversity isn't good for any brain. But it is true that some brains do better than others in the face of significant challenges.
Oh, a scientist. Yes, I agree. This is a great secret of science.
Great, yes, but not a secret. Let me explain. We're born with brains, but our brains change as we grow. They develop based on experiences we have, and different brains respond to experiences in different ways. Okay, thanks. I'll let you get back to it.
Indeed. Some brains show robustity and strongitude, while others...
Sorry, we scientists use the word resilience. Some brains are more resilient than others.
Yes, resiliensis.
Resilience?
Resilience. Revenge of the cortex.
Resilience is a result of the interplay between genes and life experiences. It's a brain's ability to maintain good functioning under adversity.
Resilience makes us invincible.
Nothing makes us invincible. What resilience does is to give less leverage to negative factors in our lives and tip the balance in favor of positive outcomes.
Resilience. Fate's legendary prize.
Whoa, no! Some people are born with more resilience than others, but resilience can also be built over time. It's a big project involving parents, caregivers, teachers,
Kith, kin, karaoke comrades,
soccer coaches, counselors,
pastry chefs, associate producers, even millennials, like a barn raising in times of old.
Yeah. In fact, we scientists believe strong brain architecture is the foundation for resilience. And, oh, look over there.
Oh, yes. A young brain returns after months of isolation and adversity. No words can describe what this poor brain has suffered.
There are words that describe it. We scientists call it toxic stress.
Toxic stress lies in wait.
No. Stress happens inside the body. It's the fight or flight system kicking in. But if stress hormones are elevated too high and for too long, it can have negative effects on the brain and body.
Stress, a nasty poison.
Not all stress, just toxic stress. With the right supports, we can make severe stress tolerable, which means it won't do lasting damage. Stress can even be positive because it helps us to learn problem solving and coping skills, which leads us back to resilience.
Alas, this brain is resilience-less.
No, it isn't. Let me explain. Remember when I talked about giving less leverage to negative experiences and tipping the scale in a positive direction? Well, here's a little something I've been working on. It's a really amazing metaphor. Here goes. I call it the resilience scale.
Resilience scales. Protective armor plates that
Shiny, but no. The resilience scale helps us understand why some brains are more resilient than others.
the resilience scale sends out invisible resilience rays that's
It's really just a scale. See? It's a beam being held up by a fulcrum.
full of crumbs.
Geez, no! A fulcrum. You know, like high school Never mind. Let me just clean this up. See, negative experiences add weight to one end of the beam, and positive factors add weight to the other end. Ideally, we want the scale to tip toward the positive side and lead towards positive life outcomes.
The brain's future literally hangs in the balance.
The position of the fulcrum can be understood as our original capacity for resilience. It's something like our genetic starting position. Remember the young brain that was struggling to survive? Look, it started life with the fulcrum off-center, giving more leverage to negative experiences. Serious stuff, like abuse, neglect, and chaotic environments. That means positive factors like responsive relationships, safe environments, and learning opportunities had less leverage. Over time, the negative load shifted the fulcrum even farther in a negative direction.
Tragedy.
Not at all. Right now, this brain is experiencing poor health. But with help, the scale can be tipped toward more positive outcomes. The first thing we can do is to stop negative experiences from stacking up. Then, we can add more positive factors, loading up the positive side of the scale. And we're not done. We can work to shift the fulcrum in a way that favors positive outcomes.
The fulcrum, an amazing instant fix-it button.
No, it's a process. It involves many supportive people and plenty of time. Remember? This brain is still young, so adult brains can work with it to relieve toxic stress and teach coping skills. In early childhood, these efforts can push the fulcrum a considerable distance.
Childhood, filled with fascination and fulcrum flexibility.
Sort of, but there are other sensitive developmental periods that are windows of opportunity, like adolescence. And even if this brain doesn't get help until adulthood, change is still possible. It will take more support, and the change will be less dramatic. But any fulcrum can be moved to make positive outcomes more achievable.
The bad experiences disappear. Poof.
I'm afraid not. It's hard to undo the effects of past negative experiences, and it takes time. But we can eventually relieve the burden of those negative experiences. Our little brain can get the help it needs to adapt, recover, and enjoy good health and wellness.
And everyone, everywhere can become more resilient for eternity.
Why not? With the right support, everyone everywhere can become more resilient.
I'm so glad I saved humanity. It's been a majestic experience.
Yeah, me too. Well done.
All right, so now that we've seen that, I really want to point out the fact that community is what helps us build resiliency. It's having those people in our lives who can help us get to that point. That's what's key. And it's not just balancing the negative and positive experiences, it's coming up with coping mechanisms that are healthy. Does anybody know the difference between a healthy and an unhealthy coping mechanism? Or would like to guess? We have Cassie coming with the mic for you. You're good, you're good.
Oh,
Did you want to share? I'm sorry. I
just doing
didn't...
positive things as to drugs and things that are destroying you, going to destroy you.
Yes, exactly. Yes, doing positive things rather than things that destroy you. So my litmus test for that is if I'm about to engage in something that's a coping mechanism and I'm not quite sure if it's healthy or unhealthy, because some things can be healthy for one person and unhealthy for another. I ask myself this: when I wake up tomorrow morning, will I be in a better place than I was the day before because I am doing this thing? Right? And that helps me find out if it's a healthy or an unhealthy coping mechanism. So keep that in mind as we move forward as well. Okay, so with supportive relationships, skill building, positive experiences, we see our resilience grow. So supportive relationships are a really, really big deal. And I know sometimes when we're stressed out, the last thing we want to do is go talk to somebody, but we really have to kind of go against what we feel on that because we really need to surround ourselves with good, healthy people. And then we lose our resilience when we forget our why we got into these situations in the first place, what our passions are, who we are at our core, right? When we're overstressed, when we have negative outlooks, we lose connection with ourself, our purpose. We take responsibility for issues that are outside of our control, and we do not accept support, okay? So here are 5 more ways that we can build resilience. The first being relationships, as we've been discussing throughout the evening. One of the papers that you have with you is a support map. So what I'm going to encourage you to do is to write your name in that center bubble. Okay, this is your support map. And then the key to this is to try to come up with at least 5 individuals. I have 3.5 right now, so it's not an easy game, okay? Who you can call if you needed that 3 a.m. call. And if you don't have those 5 people yet, maybe you don't have anybody yet, that is perfectly okay and normal, especially for survivors of trauma because of the isolation that we experience. However, we can use a really practical approach to build this out. We can come to events like this and trade phone numbers with somebody that we end up getting along with well, and testing that relationship on smaller levels than 3 a.m. phone calls, right? If you take somebody's number today, don't call them at 3 a.m. tonight, right? We want to kind of build up a little bit gradually to those things. And then it's kind of like a tryout for your support map and vice versa, right? And if that person is someone who understands you and can help you through things, then they can be put on your support map. And I think this is so important because when we're in crisis, it's really challenging for us to think critically. Who am I going to call? Who can I reach out to? But if we think about this stuff before we get into heightened crisis, then when we get into that heightened crisis, we already have a safety plan. So if you don't feel like you can feel all 5 bubbles, remember, it's a strategic thing. So you may want to go to a Celebrate Recovery situation. You may want to come hang out here at the city events. You may want to go to a book club. Barnes & Nobles has book clubs that are going on, right? So you can go to these things to get to know people, and that's how we build these relationships. No, I mean, maybe they do, but I've never had someone come knock at my door and be like, can I apply for your support map? I've had to go out and make myself a little bit uncomfortable to get it in, especially because I'm an introvert. I display as an extrovert, but I truly am an introvert. And so it does take that effort. So keep working on this. It's not going to be something that you'll accomplish today or tonight. Maybe you will. And if you can put your 5 people on here, you are a very blessed person. And I think that's fantastic. But this is something that we can build with all the time. And it's not in stone either. Okay, you can start a new one. When I was working with survivors of domestic violence, we would actually build these maps with paper plates. And then if they came back the next week to a support group and they're like, well, that person's not on my map anymore, then we would move that paper plate away, right? And we could slide them around that way because support maps are not written in concrete. So on your action plan, you can go ahead and write, what are you doing or what do you need to do more of to tend to the health and quality of your relationships? Do you need to find something that's going on, an activity, and engage in it, and maybe, trade numbers with somebody, trade phone numbers with somebody? Sometimes just having somebody's phone number and going out to coffee with them can lead to a beautiful friendship. And a lot of times we keep our heads down because society is a rough, weird place. So I encourage you to really try to engage and fill up those support maps. Number 2 is reset. To reset, we need to know where we're at. Okay, that's the first step. So rather than saying, I'm fine, we want to go ahead and start naming our emotions so we know where we're at, right? It's hard to reset if we don't know where we're starting from. So even in the most difficult emotions, we can get really valuable information from those difficult emotions. What's important to us? What do we value? What our boundaries are? So even if we get upset and we're angry, that's okay. What can we learn from that anger? Maybe that person that was on our support map shouldn't have been, or maybe we have different values than somebody else that was in traffic that day. And so we can learn from all of these things. And then we can, what's most important truly is that we learn how to scaffold our life and change our life so that we can learn from those emotions that we have. So on your action plan, you can write what you think you might need to stop doing, like maybe stop leaving at the house at 8:55 when you need to be somewhere at 9 a.m. because maybe it's actually not traffic's fault you're late, Talking to myself a little bit. Maybe you can stop saying yes to everybody and everything all the time. And then what are you going to continue to do? Maybe you'll continue coming to forums like this, where you can get great information that can help you. And what are you going to start doing? You know, maybe going to those yoga classes that were mentioned earlier. Maybe you can start doing something new to help yourself reset and fill your cup. Routines. Routines are incredibly important, and people know this for children, and they say, oh, routines are so important for kids. And then when we become adults, we lose our routine. Please don't lose your routine. And if you have, rebuild it. We find comfort as humans in routines. That's why if you have a dog and they come inside every night at 8:35, that's because creatures need routine, right? We see that in the animal kingdom all the time. And we want to try to keep that routine as much as we can in order to create safety, a feeling of safety, and that's going to help keep us out of fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, and in rest and digest, which is where we want to be. Through routines, we regain a sense of control and certainty. So these are so good for us. And that doesn't mean you can't go do something weird, go out of town or whatever. Please, by all means, live your life. But we want to try to keep the majority of our life in a pattern so that we have that feeling of safety for ourselves. And it actually has been scientifically proven that when we have routines, it creates a barrier between ourselves and stress so that we don't experience stress as closely as we would otherwise, because we know what's coming next, right? Because like I mentioned before, when we're in the middle of a crisis, it's really hard to say, what do I need to do next, right? But if we have a routine and we wake up and we're feeling anxiety, we're like, well, I know the next thing to do is to go get my espresso, or the next thing I need to do is go brush my teeth, right? So sometimes we just need to know what the next thing is, and routines gifts us that information. So on your action plan, you can identify one area of your life that could benefit from a more structured routine. And for me, it's probably my walking days, because I like to walk, and I just walk whenever it works. And that means that it very rarely happens. So I probably need to come up with firm days that I'm doing that. Recharge. You can't recharge if you're giving everything to everyone except yourself. It is so important that we have boundaries so that we can recharge. That means if you are helping people Monday through Friday, maybe don't plan a situation on a Saturday where you're going to be helping people. Maybe plan a situation where on a Saturday, you're going to be doing some of the things that you love, and you're going to recharge and help yourself. And there's always a reason not to recharge. There's always a reason not to care for ourselves. So identify those reasons and debunk them, because they're falsehoods that we've been taught throughout our lives. On your action plan, you can list on a scale of 1 to 10 how well you are prioritizing your self-care and taking time to recharge. This is an exercise of self-awareness, where we're saying, if I'm at a 5, do I want to get to a 6? And if you do want to get to a 6, then that's going to take action. That's going to take change. That's going to take you doing something, and you deserve it. And number 5 is refocus. We have things that matter, and we have things that we can control. And just like the Serenity Prayer teaches us, it's so important that we focus on things that are right in the middle. Because if we try to control things that are outside of our control, that is the fastest and most definite recipe for burnout. And it will absolutely sabotage our attempts to build our resiliency, right? And so if we're focusing on things that we can control, that's going to go ahead and move that fulcrum for us. And we're going to see our resiliency build more and more. Trust the process. Let go of the outcome. It's not easy, but it's necessary if we're going to continue to build. So on your action plan, you can list one thing that you spend energy on that is beyond your control. For me, it's probably my son. He's learning how to be kind and popular at the same time. And apparently for a 12-year-old, that's a lot. So, and I can give him all the advice I can give him, but when, he goes to school and does his thing, that's on him. That's outside of my control, right? So that's something that I need to do, because I don't want to live his life for him, because that will not be helpful. So what is the one thing that you are spending your energy on that's beyond your control? And maybe you can do something to kind of just let that go. So remember, resilience is something, just like the video taught us, that happens over time. I am remiss to tell you that you will not wake up tomorrow morning and have a magical bag of resilience sitting next to your bed. I'm sorry, I wish I could do that for you. What's going to have to happen is to practice coping mechanisms, to do the work, to continue to practice these things, practice saying no, practice saying, I do not have to feel guilty for this choice I'm making because I know what's best for me. No one else in this entire universe knows what I feel inside of my body right now, except perhaps a higher power, right? No one else knows why. So that's why we don't have to explain to them why. Okay? And so you can go ahead and select one action you can try to help build resilience, and I'll give you some examples of those. We're going to go through these very quickly. Prioritize relationships, which is part of our continuum to self-actualization. Join a group. Congratulations, you've already done that. You're here tonight. Taking care of your body. Practicing mindfulness, which is a whole nother session Tykes and Teens offers, so keep an eye out. Follow us on our website. Sometimes we do these in the community. Mindfulness is being here, right now. Not worrying about what happens when you go home later, not worrying about what happened earlier today, but being right here in this room. Find your goal and go for it one step at a time. If you're not sure what it is in life you're working on, I encourage you to come up with something that you're working on and take one step at a time and show yourself an abundance of grace. Find opportunities for self-discovery. I'm a big fan of workbooks that ask me questions about what I like and what I value, because as a survivor of trauma myself, sometimes I'm not so sure. And so when I am asked those questions, it really helps me grow. And that helps me build resilience. Keep things in perspective. Share with other people to let them help you keep it in perspective. Sometimes something can seem like a really, really big deal to us. Sometimes it is. Other times it might not be. And sometimes hearing from somebody else can help us realize that. And be hopeful. Here are some different aspects of hope. Self-reflection, goal setting and planning. Avoid negative outlets. If you're watching the news, did you want to take a picture of this one? Okay, it's a good one. If you're watching the news and you hear the same story 5 times in a row, might be time to turn the channel, right? Right? It's important that we don't ruminate on negativity because that seeps into our brains and our bodies. Watch it by all means, know what's going on in the world, but then turn something hopeful on and help others. Here's the key, y'all, without hurting yourself. Sometimes we give and we give and we give until we are no longer able to keep ourselves safe. And that needs to be our number one priority. Accept change, not always easy, but we can do that when we have a different mindset and learn from the past. Use that growth mindset that we discussed earlier. Being proactive, just like you are being here tonight. And here's a list of those again. This is a good quote, I'll share it with you. True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It's making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from. You have a self-care wheel with you. That was one of the printouts that was provided. If you are having a hard time trying to figure out how you're going to care for yourself this week, take a look at this and highlight some that look neat to you and chase after them. So go ahead and find on your action plan what you can do to go beyond self-care. Something that you can do to do just this, building a life that you don't need to regularly escape from. If you feel like all you do is wait till Friday so you can have the weekend, or all you do is wait till you're done with, this family member or that family member, extended family member, so you can be happy, maybe there's some deeper work that can be done so that every situation we can find gratitude, we can find hope, and we can find resilience. Okay, there's always a reason not to take care of ourselves. We can't let these get in the way. And so we have to, again, think about that trifecta, think about the body, the mind, and the spirit as we move forward in this way. And you can list different ways you can take care of your mind, body, and spirit. Some of those were listed earlier verbally throughout the audience today. And consider that wellness is something that we have to consider on a lot of different spectrums. If we are to give light to others, we must endure burning, but we have to make sure that we don't burn so brightly and so intensely that we lose sight of who we are and what we're trying to do. Okay? I really think that every individual in this room deserves recognition for coming here, for setting aside this time for you today. And I want you to know that this is a form of self-care, and take it to the next level. Keep doing things like this and keep doing whatever you need to do to build a life that you're not trying to escape from, because you deserve that, guilt-free and free of charge. Okay? Thank you so much, everybody. I guess we go to questions now, Patty?
I really don't want to follow that. That was phenomenal. And again, as I mentioned to one of our veterans here tonight, perhaps revisiting this topic, which is so critical in today's world, I think this should be a part 1 of part 2. What do you think, Jesse? I'm down for it. All right. All right. That's the beauty of HealthyU and the programming. It's on me. So if I've got someone, my SME, who says, hey, I'm coming back, I'm going to take that subject matter expert. So I hope you got a lot. I did. I heard a lot of what Jesse said. And a lot of it is go home and think about, for me, I was very quiet throughout it all, but the work life, the work home balance is so out of whack. So out of whack for me. But I loved the sentence that she used, and that is, no is a complete sentence. And I don't know if it's my age, my gender, the culture I grew up in, but no was not a complete sentence when I was growing up. It didn't suffice to just say, nope, not going to do it. And so that carries over in my professional life, and I don't say no. So I think that's really powerful, a powerful message. And I'm so glad you guys all came tonight. The only passing thoughts I would have are, again, consider joining us at the end of this month for, or your loved ones or family, on tobacco and vaping cessation. Come back in May, beginning of May, for bullying, cyberbullying, and spread the word. And one of the other things I would mention is, as some of you already know, we could use sponsors for this. If this program is important to you, we definitely could use sponsors. So if you're interested, come to our website. This recording will be on our website again 1 to 2 weeks from tonight. And please watch out for May is Mental Health Awareness Month. A lot of what Jesse taught us tonight will be available to you. And I want to thank you guys all for coming. Thank you. Thank you.